Very exciting today. We are finishing off our intake with the Mountune crossover pipe and the Mountune turbo elbow. So this is the crossover pipe right here, and this leads to the existing turbo elbow, which obviously goes into the side of the turbo. So the way I'm going to attack this is I'm firstly going to remove a bunch of stuff so that I can then proceed and get in here. So I need to remove obviously the intake pipe, but also to get proper access to remove the existing crossover and turbo elbow, I'm going to take off the cowl. So to do that, it's going to be two big old nuts on the end of the wipers. Take the wipers off, then undo all these little clips. They just go right along the edge of the cowl, and then there's a couple of bolts that go that are underneath the light. So I need to take the lights out in order to get at those little bolts, and then it should be just lifting it out, and we should have much better access to everything that we need to get rid of the existing parts. But I'll start with the lights and the intake hose, and then we'll move on to the actual coil itself. Okay, so for the headlights we have a T30 Torx for up here and for down here. Then we have just a normal like star head for the little clip thing here. Then for the intake hose we have a little tiny socket which is 7mm. You can use a flathead screwdriver if you want, but I just like using a little socket. Okay, we're ready to take the cowl off now that we have the lights and that first intake hose out. So the first thing we need to do is the wipers. So the wipers have these like little rubber bung things over the top of the nuts that hold them on. So we take that off, and then we're going to use a 15mm socket to take these off. Okay, now that we have those nuts off, we need to take the wipers off. So hopefully we just need to give them a wee bit of a jiggle and they will come off. There we go, that's one. There we go, that's two. Alright, so now these here clips, so I think they pretty much just should be able to be pried off by hand. Yeah, so that's in there, you can see they just clip on, they're not very strong. So they're all along, just take them all off. Some of these are being a bit of a pain to get off, so I'm trying to just pry them off with a screwdriver. Come on. Got it. Okay, so now we have exposed these bolts from taking off the lights, and those require a 10mm socket, so just going to take those off. We're ready to take the top part of the liner off, and you can sort of see here that it's like there's like a little bit of a clippy thing here holding it onto like the liner of the windscreen, so just kind of need to pry that out a bit if possible. There we go, and the same on the other side. So we should be able to just lift this out now. Oh, hello. There we go, that's the top bit out. You can tell I just washed the car. I actually forgot about these. There's another little bolt to take out either side for the lower half of the cowl. So they're exactly the same as the ones that were just over there. So 10mm socket. So because it's kind of in there, I've just thrown on the 10mm deep socket just to make it a little bit easier on myself. So on this side, which is the driver's side, even my deep socket wasn't quite cutting it because of all this crap in the way. So I just got my 10mm socket on the end of my screwdriver, which can go straight in there, and that's the job. There's also this little thing that's like connected to the lower part of the coil. If we just pinch the top of that and pull it through, then that's it off. So hopefully we should be able to take the lower half of the coil out now. Oh, yep. One of my metal things just fell off. I think it fell off right through onto the floor, so that's okay. It's just these like metally, I don't even know what you would call these, but they're just like sort of compressed on there. So one of mine fell off, but should be okay. Right, now we're ready to remove the stock crossover. So first we just remove this, which is just like pinching either side and then pulling it off. Like that, and just twisting that out of the way a little bit. Then we have a couple of little nutty bolty boils to get off. So this one is 10mm and I am using a 10mm deep socket. So I want to just be careful. Take it out nice and easy. I've just loosened this with a 12mm deep socket, and it's kind of just like a screwy outy thing. So this is the one that the engine cover clips onto. So just take that off and put that to the side for later. This little nut is a bit of a bell end. The first time I tried taking it out, it tried to bring the whole thing, the whole like whatever you would call that, like bolty thing out with it. It was like completely stuck in there and I was kind of confused. I was like, why is this all coming out? Luckily I was able to get that like put back in, so I just put it all the way in as far as I could go, and then I sort of overdid it a bit and that dislodged the nut. So then I was able to get it loosened to be removed. Just one to look out for on that, because that almost got me there. And if you keep like trying to go at it, you could destroy the threads and stuff. So just be careful on this little nut. Right, so this is kind of impossible to show you exactly what I'm doing, but there is the clamp that's holding the crossover pipe on is like a little 7mm socket or a little flathead screwdriver, kind of similar to the Intech hose clamps. So what I'm currently doing is I have a 7mm socket on the end of my screwdriver, and I'm just like turning it so slowly because the space is so small. I can only turn it like a tiny wee bit at a time. So I'm just doing that until it's loose, and then we should be able to pull the crossover pipe off. So I just about had it loose enough, give it a bit of a wiggle, and it came right off. That was the clamp right there. You can see, just loosen that and give it a wiggle and it comes off. Alright, so here's the side by side of the stock crossover versus the Mountune crossover. You can kind of see at this end that the Mountune is just a larger and consistently larger bore the whole way along. So good stuff, and it looks nicer. You can kind of see the top of the stock turbo elbow there. It's really difficult to show you anything in this tight space, but there are 3 little bolts holding that on, which we're going to take off now. Okay, so these little bolts that are holding the turbo elbow in are 8mm, and well, for the first one anyway, I found that a ratcheting spanner was the best thing for the job to loosen that up, and I'm now awkwardly just trying to remove it with my fingers. There we go, that's one out. So what I found for a couple of those bolts was, yes, loosening with this, because obviously you can get this at a bit of an angle, get it on, and then sort of try and straighten it up as much as possible, and then like break it. And then I found that using like a screwdriver 8mm socket on the end of an extension, I was able to just sort of shimmy that in and then just twist it off. It was quite helpful. So that's all 3 of those bolts off. So now there's one thing that we need to do before we can actually remove the turbo elbow, and it's like there's a little bit of a clumpy thing holding on this little bit of a hosey thing. So what we need is a pair of pliers to press together the tabs to loosen the clamp on that, and then it should slide right off. So this is a little clamp that we need to remove, and then pull this hose off, and then the turbo elbow can come out, because obviously no bolt, it's completely just hanging in there. So I'm going to do this off camera because I'm kind of very gingerly just holding things at the minute, and it's a very awkward tight space, so I'll just do that now.
Yep.
Well, that was nice and awkward, but we have the turbo elbow out, and this is our little obligatory side-to-side comparison. So you can kind of see just where the turbo, the actual entry to the turbo is. We have just a nice wider bore. So, and it's obviously nicer looking, better material, and yeah, so time to get this in. This will be obviously the first part that goes in. It was the last part to come out. So let's get everything put in and put back together. So the first thing is I'm going to clean the surfaces of both the turbo and the turbo elbow itself. So I'm just using a little alcohol wipe. Just give it a wee wipe, make sure it is nice and clean and degreased. So let that dry off and then we'll be good to go for the next part. Okay, so you don't get any kind of a gasket or anything with this that you might get with some competitor solutions. So I have been told by Fred at Mountune HQ that what they do whenever they're installing these is that they use some gasket sealant and they put a really thin smear along the edge of it, and that's what they use. So I went and got some of this, which is Loctite blue silicone gasket. So I'm just going to use this. I'm going to scooch a wee thin layer on, really thin, and then just probably with just my finger like, smear it like just really thin. We don't want to put on too much because if we put on too much, and also if we put it too close to the inner edge, it could go over, like squeeze into the inside of the pipe, and if that happens then it could get sucked into the turbo, which we really don't want. So I'm going to crack this open, I'm going to go down, I'm going to connect the little nipply thing here, then I'm going to do my smear and then bolt it in. So I can see I have the wee nipply thing connected in there, just the exact opposite of taking it off. Alright, so that's my smear of the blue gasket, instant gasket sealant stuff. So now I'm gonna just use the stock bolts that we took out of the stock turbo elbow and bolt it right back in. Once again, because this is really awkward, I'll do it off camera and then just show you it once it's in place. Alright, after a lot of awkward fiddling around with those bolts, the turbo elbow is now nice and securely in place. Hand tightened everything. I don't think you could even get any power tools in here, but you don't need no power tools. Just hand tighten as good as you can, and it's feeling pretty solid and looking good. So now we're ready to connect the silicone coupler, which will then connect to the crossover pipe. Okay, so this is the silicone coupler. So Mountune, it's made by Samco Sport, just like all the other Mountune hoses that you can get. And Mountune supply it with two of these big old Jubilee clips, which is very nice of them to not make us buy those separately. So yeah, it's just a simple case. We'll put one of these on the bottom, then we'll shimmy it on the top of the turbo elbow, then we'll tighten it up, and then we'll be ready for the crossover pipe. Okay, so now we're ready for the crossover pipe. So we're going to put the second clamp over this, then shimmy it into the coupler, then tighten her up, and we should be good. We obviously need to position these two holes where this thingamabob is and where the little post for the engine cover goes in. So we need to make sure that that's all aligned before we tighten anything fully tightened. But yeah, that's the kind of process. So I'll check back with you in a couple of minutes. It was a right pain getting these two clamps in place and getting everything lined up, because you need to get those in and in all the way and then tightened, but then you also need to line this up into over the top of this like screwy bolt thing, and that can be a bit tricky because you need to have it like over this the whole time whenever you're shimmying it into the silicone. So you know, it might be better to put the silicone onto this first, just whatever works for you. It's maybe a little bit of trial and error just to get whatever works, but once you do that, then it's you're fairly home and dry. It's just a case of I got the little rubber bushing things that were on the stock crossover pipe, and I basically put them in the exact same position that they were in. The one for this one with the engine cover goes into, it's all one unit, the top and bottom rubber bushing, but of course the Mountune crossover has like just a solid ring, so it was just a case of like using a screwdriver to sort of push the bottom part of the rubber through, and then that worked just nicely. So then just tightening those up, and it's absolutely solid as a rock. and looking great. So then we can just reconnect this. Right, so we just need to get this lined up. Oh, yeah. Right, so I've gone ahead and reconnected the intake hose just so that you can see from the start to finish the whole intake path, and it looks pretty sweet, looks pretty awesome. So all that's left to do now is to put the cowl back on, put the lights back in, and we're done. Okay, so that is installation complete of the Mountune crossover pipe and turbo elbow. I think it looks fantastic and it actually sounds really good. It seems to make the sort of intake noise a little bit louder. I need to go out onto the road and see how it performs, if it makes any noticeable difference. But for now, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share and subscribe for more content to come very soon. Cheers, goodbye.